Okay, I think it's gonna work this time. Oh man. Oh god. I am very, very much big professional streamer. I definitely know what I'm doing, and I definitely did not just start a previous stream without my camera on and without my camera functioning. Definitely didn't do that. That's not a thing. Not a thing that happened. Okay, so now since I had to totally redo this, we're going to grab the video link and we're going to properly put it out on the dying platform that is twitter.com, allegedly. So we're going to go here and we're going to go, sorry, stream is here. I'm going to tag Keebs because he mentioned he was going to come by. And we'll go hashtag CFL, and then we'll go there. All right. So that's better. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So now we're here. And now the purpose of us being here is to truly have that conversation about Grey Cup 109, which is coming up on Sunday. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Toronto Argonauts, taking place from, I believe it's Mosaic. They're playing in Saskatchewan. So look, incredibly exciting time. The best time to be a football fan is when you have that one singular championship game for all the marbles. And that's what we're going to have on Sunday. Before I talk about the actual game, there was something else, something rather important, actually, CFL related, that did take place today, which was Randy Ambrosie and the CFL had the CFL Fans State of the League address, where Randy Ambrosie, for an hour, fielded questions from fans watching the live stream, people that couldn't be in Regina for the festivities. So I wanted to kind of take the beginning part of this stream and I wanted to talk about a couple of points that came up during the State of the League from the fans. And I wanted to say at first, I thought the questions that were presented by the fans were actually fantastic. Like, I think they were, for the most part, on the level of what you would see from people in the media. Like, I thought the quality of question was really, really high. It wasn't the softball, what's your favorite part about football in Canada? Like, no, they asked him real questions and he had to give real answers in a number of instances. So I wanted to kind of take a second and talk about a couple of those before we actually get into talking about the game. We got Gorian in the chat. How you doing, my friend? TCU and Bombers moneyline parlay. Ooh, I like that. Argos get rolled. I live in Toronto, but I'm anti-Toronto sports fan except the Raptors. Hey, go Raptors. We gotta hold on to the Raptors like grim death because they almost left us a few years back. It wasn't talked about nearly as much as it should have been, but there was like a real possibility that the Raptors could be pulled out of Toronto. But that's not going to happen anymore because now they're NBA champions and they're still the most disrespected NBA champions in the history of that league. Of course, fueled as always by the great folks at Nerd Teas and Coffee Bean. We'll talk about them a little bit more just before we start talking about the game. Anybody else who happens to be in the chat catching this impromptu live stream, feel free to lurk as always. But if you want to shout yourself out in the chat, please do. But like I say, I just wanted to talk. Oh, Keeps, thanks for the link, Justin. No worries. I started and no, you know what? I didn't start. That was not a thing that happened. We'll just move on. Professional streamer. I should get a shirt that just says professional streamer. And I feel like that's like a really lame streamer joke thing to do, but I feel like it's apropos with the way some of my streams have gone. So I'm going to be on my phone here just because I'm going to be referring to my great friends CFL News at CFL_news on Twitter, which is an excellent follow, kind of a news amalgamator around the CFL. Great follow. All kinds of great information. I think they tweet out my stuff quite a bit as well, so I like them extra. But they did a really good job of succinctly putting together a lot of the points that I kind of want to talk about from the State of the League address for the fans, just before we get into talking about Grey Cup 109. So the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was Randy Ambrosie talked about the CBA and talked about how the fact that they're locked into a CBA with a pretty long duration, like it's 7 years when they signed up for it. It'll be 6 years, of course, from the end of this season, and the real importance of having that locked up so that they have the security, both sides, the league as well as the PA. Have the security of, okay, we're working under an arrangement for now, but we're also going to take this time to properly work towards an arrangement that's better in the future. So I like that he called that out specifically, because that degree of security, I think, is something that a lot of people, a lot of CFL detractors will talk about security, and we'll talk about a perceived lack of security with the CFL. So it's nice that you do have that period of time, the next 6 years, where you have a working agreement. You've got that kind of security between the Players Association and the league, so that you can negotiate in good faith. And you do understand that, look, even if there's struggles in the negotiation, which there certainly will be, that you've still got that arrangement that you're working under. Fans don't have to worry about games being canceled. Like the beginning of this season, we didn't know if the season was going to start on time. Like just all kinds of stuff that injures the fan perspective, injures the league, injures the players, it injures everybody. So it was kind of nice, and I'm kind of glad that he did shout that out, that they do have that arrangement moving forward, and it'll allow them to negotiate better. Obviously, and I'm not unbiased in this portion of the conversation, they talked a lot about the Atlantic Schooners, and they talked a lot about expansion. They talked a lot about what it's going to look like when this league is a 10-team league. And a lot of the verbiage that they used was not if. It's not if, it's when. It's when this league is a 10-team league. When the league is eventually like a 12-team league, looking at you, Quebec City, looking at you, I don't know, somewhere else out west. They could probably afford to have another team out in BC. But like when this league eventually is a 10-team league, and obviously all the roots are there for the Atlantic Schooners. All the roots are there based off the success of Touchdown Atlantic. We know there is an appetite. We know there is a fever for Canadian football on the East Coast. And I'm going to say something that I've never actually said out loud. Even if the Atlantic Schooners are not based in Halifax, even if they're not based here, I will still support the hell out of that team. I will still have season tickets to the Atlantic Schooners. Will I be able to go to every home game? No, I won't, because if let's say they're taking place in Moncton, I'm not going to be able to go to Moncton 9 times a year to go to these home games. But if I would be expecting people from New Brunswick to support the team if it was in Halifax, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't do the same. So out loud here, I'm saying, if the Atlantic Schooners were based, say, in Moncton or even in Fredericton rather than in Halifax, I would still support the crap out of that team. That's where we know this league has to expand into. It has to be Atlantic Canada. There's an appetite for it. There's a market for it. This is a market that is starved for professional sports. Like we've got the Mooseheads, we've got junior hockey, we've got, Canadian pro basketball, but really starved for that professional team. And it's a hand into a custom made glove. It has to be the Atlantic Schooners. And I loved hearing that the league is doubling down on its commitment to the fact that it's going to be the Atlantic Schooners, and it's just a matter of when. And the fact that real conversations are going to be happening, and a renewed level of conversation about making that happen, making the stadium situation work out, no matter what it has to look like. Look, if this is a 12,000 seat outlaw mud show stadium, I don't care. I just want this team in the league. I just want a complete 10-team CFL. That's my dream. Let's make it happen as soon as humanly possible. Let's go into the chat here. Andrew Warren, it's about time you do a CFL live pick show. I did this live back in week 19, didn't I? Was it week 17 or week 19? I did one of these live. It was a couple weeks back. CBC playoff games need to be a thing again, says Gorian. That's how I grew up watching CFL playoff games on CBC, and I thought CBC did a really good job of them as well. But I see Gorian also indicates Sportsnet plus CFL equals never, please. Yeah, I don't like Sportsnet's presentation on a lot of things. Maybe it was because I grew up on TSN. So TSN is what I'm familiar with and what I'm more comfortable with. Maybe that's it. Even though the TSN of today is just ESPN, it doesn't resemble the TSN of before at all. But I don't love the way Sportsnet does their presentation on things. Yeah, Gorian, 5-5. Cool. Exactly. It only makes sense. 5 out east, 5 out west. Let's roll. Andrew says, I'm still waiting for the Atlantic Schooners. You and me both, brother. Keebs, London, Ontario could support a team. I wouldn't be against another team in Ontario. Like, look, if it's a 10-team league, if 4 of them are going to be in Ontario, I'm okay with that. If it's a 12-team league, like if you expand into 12, totally. Put another Ontario market in there or something like a Quebec City or something like that. I'm totally okay with that. If the market can bear it, absolutely. Andrew, if I finally finish school, you better invite me. Just have to get a passport. 100%. You come up, we'll get you good and drunk on Canadian beer. We'll watch some good Canadian football. That's my promise to you. Never was a fan of Fox Sports personally. Yeah, I kind of liked it for a little bit, but Fox is a little questionable for me too. Let's see. Yeah, Randy Ambrosi says the CFL is very focused on Atlantic Canada as a strong possibility. And something else he said, he wants to use expansion as part of the solution to finishing the season earlier. Like, I understand probably got to start the season a little bit earlier as well, but the idea of finishing the season earlier than it finishes now to be less cannibalized by the NFL, to be less cannibalized by the NHL, like to expand the amount of time that the CFL is one of the few games in town. Basically, it's CFL and Major League Baseball. To increase that amount of time and reduce the amount of time where the audience is being eaten up by other things. Totally get it. Absolutely love it. Let's see. So CFL's in the process of finalizing the 2023 schedule. We should be getting that just ahead of Christmas, which is obviously very exciting. They also, they talked about, again, Gorian kind of alluded to this. They talked about Sportsnet potentially getting like a game a week, like the CFL game of the week or something like that. TSN's never going to hand over one of those games to Sportsnet. That's just not going to happen. They would probably hand over the entire contract before they would like hand over even a single game to a direct competitor. So that's definitely not going to happen. And I'm going to, again, hope and pray that Sportsnet does not get that contract, because I just don't like the way they present live sports. Let's see. I was happy to hear about Ambrosi talk about like live video streaming as kind of the future of consuming content, because you see some teams that are starting to get into this more. CFL teams are honestly really good now about posting highlights like quickly, sort of after they happen. Like within about 5 minutes of something happening in a game, there's a video highlight on their social media. So they've gotten a lot better about this in the last couple of years, but he's absolutely right. Like the ability to buy games to watch online and have that service be seamless and secure and the quality of the streams be very high, that's probably the future of the CFL. I don't think they're really ever going to talk about getting rid of the TV contracts fully, and we'll talk about TV in the United States here in a little bit, but the ability to buy and watch games through live streaming is 100% a big revenue future for the CFL, as well as gambling, which that's come into its own in the last year, especially with the CFL. But that's got to be something that comes along with it. Let's see. Quebec City, great idea too, said Keebs. Oh, Andrew, you're quitting drinking. Congratulations. Like I say that, come up here and get you drunk on Canadian beer. But look, if you're taking the step to quit drinking, that's cool. That's a difficult thing to do. And I wish you the best of luck. Gorian, summer season. Grey Cup should be presented by week 3 of the NFL. Well, that's kind of interesting. Like you've got, week 1, 2, and 3 in the NFL would be your 3 playoff weeks in the CFL. They might want to stagger that a little bit more, but that's an interesting concept. I kind of like that. Super pumped about playoff games on Saturday next year. Yes, we're going to get to that in a second because that is monstrous. That's really, really big. Forget the idea of CFL getting or CBC getting CFL again as CBC and Sportsnet are one. Exactly. You could do something in there where CBC has a specific subcontract, but Sportsnet doesn't. But I think we're getting technically overcomplicated here. I think I did it with smoking years ago. Don't see why I can't do it for drinking. Good on you, man. That's awesome. So yes, Keebs just mentioned it. Playoff games moving to Saturdays next year. Thank you. Because there's absolutely no reason. Look, Sunday's a football day. I get it. I fully understand. But there is no reason that the CFL should allow its audience to be cannibalized by the fact that there are NFL football games going on at the same time as their playoff games. Full stop, period. There's no reason to do it that way. Because look, if you have a choice this year between the East semifinal, between 2 teams who were only kind of this year, or the entirety of the 1 p.m. slate in the NFL, which of the 2 are you going to watch? Yeah, if you're a hardcore CFL fan, you would probably forego the 4 p.m. slate of games to watch the West semifinal or the West final because you're getting one of the great teams. Totally get it. But that, I don't know, it's to go up against the NFL when you don't absolutely have to, unless the NFL's subsidizing you, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So yes, the fact that playoff games beginning next year are going to be moving to Saturdays is massive. Very smart move. Very good move. Let's see. They talked about the changes to the game this year. So like moving the hash marks in and the results that kind of had, primarily with the sport being first down conversions were up, scoring was way up. We're back up to almost like 52 points a game. I think after last year, like the under was like massive for a lot of the season last year. It was hashtag over season for a little bit, but after that, it was almost like take the under in everything. Scoring was way down. And that was after being off for a full year. So you kind of get it. But the changes they made to the game this year that did increase the offense and made it a more exciting product, he absolutely should have Barry Horowitzed himself on that, pat him on the back, because they were almost unanimously smart moves. Something else that got mentioned too was the league wanting to reach out to other markets about concepts similar to Touchdown Atlantic. So like we got Touchdown Atlantic, which is awesome. It's great. I love having a regular season game in Atlantic Canada until we have an actual team. But to reach out to other markets across the country and say like, hey, we're going to bring a regular season playoff game to Red Deer, Alberta. Or we're going to bring a regular season playoff game to Brandon, Manitoba. Or we're going to bring a regular season game to Thunder Bay. Or we're going to bring a regular season game to Quebec City. Or whatever it happens to be. Even the possibility of exploring regular season CFL games south of the border. Think about this. Think about going to like North Dakota. Like it's right on the border, just cross the border, and to present the Canadian game to those northern US states that all like Canada's already a part of their life because they're right on the border. So like don't have a full team down in the US, and Andrew mentions it before, like let's not Las Vegas posse this thing, but to present regular season NFL games in mid-sized US markets along the border. Like, tell me that Seattle, Washington wouldn't go nuts for a Saturday night Lions, like Lions Bombers in Seattle, Washington on a Saturday night. That's a game. And that would draw an audience with these northern markets in the US. You could do it like just across the whole border. You could have, again, have like an Argos Ticats game in Buffalo, or an Elks, let's say you do like Elks Alouettes in Detroit or something like that. Like, you could have, even if they're NFL markets, just have the games in these markets, and pay the stadiums to host the games, whatever it is. But exploring the possibility of having those regular season games and have them in US markets to really saturate that market with the concept of, ooh, the CFL. That's cool. I would love to see that. Maybe not, it might not happen in the next year or two, but I would love to see it. Absolutely would love to see it. Let's see. I was quite happy to hear about the deep commitment, I guess, that Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment has to the Argos now, or at least that's what they're saying in public. Because the second MLSE decides to pull out of that thing, where does that team go? And that's, whether you like the Argos or you don't like the Argos, they're an anchor franchise in this league. So to have MLSE as deep on board as they seem to be in that, in Argos culture and in building a winner with the Argos and everything like that, it was very reassuring, I guess, in a way, to hear like, okay, like it seems like MLSE is in, so I guess that's like we can sigh of relief, right? So Ambrosi also talked about the US TV deal, and this was a big part of them partnering up with Genius Sports. Was that's their big driving thing now, is arranging a better US TV deal for the CFL, which is absolutely critical. I mean, it's critical to the growth of the league. I like everything that the CFL did with its global initiatives. It made them no money, or no tangible money, but I like the way that they want to build the league and build the consciousness of the CFL, like, as a global entity. That's great. But to do that without a US TV deal, without a better US TV deal than they have now, I just don't think it's going to work. And if that means detaching yourself from ESPN and going to say Fox, or going to the USA Network, or going to some other entity that has widespread coverage, and being able to present the CFL on television in more American markets, exceptionally important for the way that they have to grow the league. I think that was about it from the state of the league. But all all of these, again, these were questions coming from fans. So very, very important. And it's an important part of building this league domestically. It's an important part of building the league in Canada, that the fans genuinely feel like they do have a voice, and doing stuff like this, and doing stuff like this more often. There's no reason you couldn't do something like this once a month, certainly during the season. Like, this should be a once a month thing while the games are being played. That feels like there's some transparency and some accountability to the folks who are watching and the folks who are supporting the league, especially where this is such a gate-driven and ratings-driven league financially. Something like this should be happening way more often than it actually is. So that's about the end of what I wanted to talk about with that. And we're going to get into talking about Grey Cup 109 here in just one moment. I'm going to go through and get caught up with the chat. We will do our sponsor deal with Nerd Tees, and then we're going to get into this game. So let's see. Gorian said Grey Cup 2 needs to move to Saturday. Moving the Grey Cup to Saturday 2, please. That's a possibility, I guess. I like the idea of the Grey Cup being on Sunday, but it runs into the exact same problem. You're going to run into the tail end of the 4 p.m. slate, and you're also going to run into the build up to Sunday Night Football. So your audience is going to be eaten away to a certain degree. So if you wanted to move that to a Saturday or even move it to a Friday, even if that requires taking a bye week between the East and West finals and the Grey Cup, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because like you think about Friday Night Football, you think about the CFL. So the concept of having the Grey Cup be on a Friday night might be interesting, but that's for people who have business degrees and who are much smarter in the economics of things than I am. Andrew, unless it's the Rocks version of the XFL or the USFL, it might be on Sunday. The XFL. Just don't do it in the USA like they did in the 90s. Right, yeah, but having an actual team, in the US, yeah, I think that was heart was in the right place, head not so much. Leaning Blue Bombers money line in the under, but I think the Argos are a formidable opponent that had a tumultuous season with a lot of controversy, so making the championship games a major achievement. That came from Daryl Turner. Daryl, thank you very much for checking out the live stream, my friend. I appreciate that very much, and that's an excellent comment. Like, the Bombers deserve to be as heavy a favorite as they are coming into this game, 100%, but the Argos are not going to be an easy out here, not by any means. And you look at like their last 10 games head-to-head, they're not an easy out, not at all. Andrew says maybe even a preseason game with a CFL team versus an NFL team. You know what I'd like to see? Put together a CFL All-Star team, a full 53-man roster, and have an NFL team on a rotational basis come up to Canada, have a random, like a non-playoff NFL team from the previous year, have a CFL All-Star team, play under CFL rules. There's all kinds of fun things that you could do to promote not only like a professional working relationship between the two leagues, but just to promote the concept of Canadian football. There's all kinds of great ideas. And actually, Daryl's got one in the chat right now. What about a tournament of all professional football league championship teams every year in a World Bowl? You'd have to have a unified set of rules in order to do that, but it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, you could absolutely do something like that, more so for bragging rights than anything else, but if you could unify a set of rules, let's do it. Let's try it. Like, what's the worst that can happen is, oh no, this thing that we tried one time didn't make money, so we're not going to do it again. Like, that's the worst that can happen in that situation. So why not? Give it a go. Let's see. Argos belong in the SY Dome. If there's a US CFL TV deal, I'm all in. Yeah, there is ESPN2, but again, if you don't get ESPN2, it's very difficult to get the CFL in the US. Argos can't even pack BMO. It's a problem. It's a problem. There's a lot of options in that market, and they've got to triple down and quadruple down about how they market that team and the league in the Toronto area, in the GTA. Let's see. Waiting for Ring of Honor to get a TV deal. That would be sweet. It's just me wishing my youth, not because it makes financial sense. Oh, the Sky Dome. Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Cool Friday idea. Lions could win in Canada. Don't tell that to Half Moon. I don't know, man. Like, there's NFL teams that would lose to the Blue Bombers, especially if you were playing CFL rule set. There are. How you doing, Wildcat? Awesome. Thanks for joining in. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Tees, and then we're going to get into talking about the game. So, folks, you know, I've been telling you for a long, long time, nerdtees.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea blends and accessories, and now dozens and dozens of incredible flavored coffee blends as well. No matter how you like your caffeine, nerdteas.ca has got you covered, and I have got you covered with my promo code, which is BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, which is an excellent value. And if you're one of my US viewers and listeners, you are going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar as well. Since we're going big for this Grey Cup live stream for Grey Cup 109, my favorite blend, which is watermelon oolong, smells incredible. You open the bag and your house smells like watermelon. You can't ask for anything more than that. Nerdteas.ca, promo code BWFinest, get you 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdteas.ca. God, that tea's good. Like, it's just, I know I do the pitch very similarly every week, but like, I wouldn't be pitching it this hard if I didn't believe in the product. It's the same with like the Dynasty Trade Calculator, right? If I didn't believe in it, I would not pitch it as hard as I do. But I buy it, I believe in it, and I think you'll like it too. Bring my handy dandy notes over here. And we are ready to roll. Grey Cup 109 takes place this Sunday. I cannot wait for it. It is the culmination of the 2022 CFL regular season. Now, last week had a bounce back. 2 weeks ago, 1-5 in the first round of the playoffs. Not feeling very good. Last week with the East and West finals, I did much better. 4-2 across the two games. I was 1-1 straight up because I did take Montreal to win the East final. It was also only 1-1 against the spread because I did take the Alouettes with the points. However, what I did do is got both totals. So that did give me a 4-2 record. Means I'm 5-7 so far on the playoffs, which does mean that if I sweep the Grey Cup, I finished the playoffs above 500, which after a 1-5 start would feel pretty friggin' awesome if we did manage to do that. So let's just go ahead and sweep the Grey Cup. I mean, why not? What else are we going to do? Let's just go ahead and sweep the Grey Cup. Now, for CFL Fantasy, I had actually a pretty excellent week with the division finals, 69.8 points. My MVP there was Montreal wide receiver Tyson Philpott. Second week in a row in the playoffs that my MVP came from a losing team. But Tyson Philpott had a coming out party in that game last week. 8 catches, put up well over 100 yards, had a receiving touchdown, also had a 2-point convert in there, 28.7 points for Tyson Philpott. He is going to be a machine next season in the CFL. I cannot wait to make him a staple of my CFL fantasy rosters moving forward next season. Now, I do not have a fantasy roster built right now because you and I are going to build that roster together after we talk about the game. So that is going to go to the end of this episode, and we are going to build my fantasy roster after I've told you how I think the game is going to go. Let's see. Andrew says, if it was the morning, I would have coffee and breakfast. There you go. Exactly. Andrew loves breakfast. Hashtag Andrew loves breakfast. Daryl, also, how differently will the Argos play the Bombers in comparison to the Ticats who played them last year in the championship? So it's going to be a different football game for sure. The Ticats, I think there were higher expectations on the Ticats the last 2 years that they played the Bombers in the Grey Cup final. I think there was legitimate feeling that the Ticats could have won either one of those games. And look, I mean, 2021, it goes to overtime, and it's an interception in overtime that ends that game. So the belief was really there. I feel like there's not a ton of belief in the Argos coming into this game. Look, and that comes from somebody, I've been fading the Argos all season long, and they have consistently beat me. Like, they just beat me all season long. I've consistently faded them, and it's made me almost no money. So I genuinely think that a lot of people are sleeping on the Argos here. I think that's a thing that they feel they absolutely positively have to use to their advantage. Their defense has to be opportunistic. All kinds of things have to go right. It's a very narrow path for the Argos to possibly win this football game, but the path is there. I just don't think a lot of people believe that it's there. So I think they're coming in with a nobody believes in us right now anyway. They're coming into it with this underdog mentality that I don't necessarily think the Ticats have had over the last couple of Grey Cups. If that makes any sense, I don't know whether that answers the question or not, but it's about as close of an answer as I can come up with. Shout out to Mrs. Big Hill, just saying she interacts on the Twitters. Absolutely. There's fantasy even now. Oh, Gorian, there's been fantasy all season long, my guy. I've been playing CFL Fantasy since literally week 1 of this year, and I played it all year last year, and I think most of the year before that. So, oh yeah, CFL Fantasy is becoming a much bigger deal. Chad Suska is in the chat now too. Winnipeg to win. I take the money line. Money, 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 money. Fair enough. All right, so the Bombers come into this game as 5.5-point favorites. And again, they deserve to be as heavily favored as they are. Total in this game sits at 47.5 points. I don't care if I lose 100 times over. MBT is as bad as is Evans and Hamilton, says Gorian. Andrew chimes in, says at least the game, it won't be moved to another stadium like Bills and Browns. Yeah, boy, that's what a situation that is. But you know what? I think that plays to the Bills' benefit. I really think it does. I think it opens up their pass game in ways that was not going to be open if they were actually playing it in Buffalo. So Toronto's path to the Grey Cup, obviously they had the bye through the first round of the East playoffs, but they had a 34-27 victory last week in Toronto over the Montreal Alouettes. Winnipeg also had the bye through the first round and beat BC 28-20 in Winnipeg. Sets up the Grey Cup, the matchup of the number one team in the East Division, number one team in the West Division. It's almost like it was meant to be. It's not what I called, but it's almost like it was meant to be. All right, Toronto versus Winnipeg. What I did here is I did want to take a look at their last 5 playoff games overall for both of these teams. Now, in one case, a lot of this roster has been there for those last 5 games. And in the other case, I think all of the roster has not been there for the last 5 playoff games the franchise has played. For Toronto, they're 3-2 in their last 5 playoff games overall, a 34-27 win, a 19-27 loss, wins of 27-24 and 25-21, and a 25-22 loss. But that dates all the way back to 2015. So you got to go back 7 years to find 5 Toronto Argos playoff games, the last 5 Toronto Argos playoff games. Whereas with the Bombers, you only have to go back to 2019. And remember, we didn't have a season in 2020. And in those last 5 playoff games, wouldn't you know who won the pony? The Bombers are 5-0. Wins of 28-20, 33-25, 21-17, 33-12, and 20-13. So with the exception of one game, all of those have been won by at least a touchdown, if not more. Bombers and Argos did play each other once this year. That was a 23-22 win by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Toronto all the way back in week 4. I remember that game vividly. And yeah, that was a very close, that was the first point in the season where you could kind of look at the Bombers and go like, is this the same team? 23-22. And I think this might have been one of these teams was coming off a bye, I believe, or they were coming off of a highly emotional win. That might have been what it was, or like a blowout win or something like that. It might have been the Bombers, actually, and then they came into this game and they barely survived Toronto. I think that was what the context of it was. So obviously, very, very close game, but Winnipeg has controlled the head-to-head matchup between these two teams in the last 10. Dating back to 2016, Winnipeg has won 7 of the last 10 head-to-head matchups against Toronto. The worst loss that the Bombers have suffered in that span was a 30-23 loss back, I think it was in, I want to say it was 2017, but I might be wrong about that. So that's the worst loss. The worst loss was a one possession game, a game where one play could have made the entirety of the difference. So when I say this Bombers team has dominated this head to head matchup, they absolutely have. The other two Argos wins are both by a single point. Let's see. Gorian. Oh, I already got that. Chad, I bring warm weather too. Talk about lucky on that. Right on. Daryl. So the Argos will not be intimidated by the fans in the stands, the championship banners, the trophies, the MVP playmakers, and the All Stars across the Winnipeg depth chart. I don't necessarily know. Like, again, it's being played on a neutral site, so the game's not in Winnipeg. If the game was in Winnipeg, that would probably make a difference. Um, are they going to be intimidated by that? Quite possibly. I mean, like they know looking across and seeing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they see the modern CFL dynasty. Everybody knows they see the modern CFL dynasty when they stand across from the Bombers. So, granted, they only got to do that once this year, and it is kind of a thing to behold. But I don't know if intimidated is the right word. They're definitely going to take it into account. Like you have to. If you don't, you're probably going to lose by 40. So like you definitely have to take it into account. And you need to know that every single play is going to potentially be a play that could cost you the Grey Cup. Now, in terms of how I really think this game is going to go, there are some betting trends that I think are worth keeping an eye on, taking a look at. Argos are winless in their last 4 games against the spread following a win. They are 0-3-1 against the spread in those 4 games. However, they are 5-1-1 against the spread in 2022 against teams with winning records. So they only played 7 such games this year, but won 5 of them against the spread. Reminder, they are plus 5.5 point dogs in this game. The Bombers, for their right, are on a 5-1 against the spread run in playoff games, and that does matter because the core of this team has been together for multiple years. So the fact that they're on a 5-1 against the spread run in their last 6 playoff games 100% matters. The other thing I wanted to mention about the total in this one, I'm probably going to be leaning under on this one. Let's spoil this one right out of the gate. The Argos under in games in November. 7-1 in the last 8. So on a big run there on the unders in November. And the Bombers under in what would be considered home playoff games, quote unquote. They're on a 6-1 run. They're considered the home team here. They're on a 6-1 run in home playoff games to the under. So I don't think we're going to see a ton of points in this football game. So let's go ahead and spoil that right now. The total's 47.5 points. I'm on the under. I don't think we're going to see a ton of points in this game. It might get to 40, but I don't think it gets to 48. So we're going to grab the under here, under 47.5 points in Winnipeg, Toronto. Now, in terms of who I think is going to win the game, who am I to deny destiny? Who am I to deny the dynasty that is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? I'm going to go ahead and grab the Bombers to win their 3rd straight Grey Cup. Is it the easy answer? Absolutely it is. Do I think Toronto can be something special? I think they can. The question is whether they will be. I don't think they've been reliably special this year, and it's going to take a team that is reliably special to beat the Bombers. So I'm going to have to go ahead and grab the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here to win the game outright. And against the spread, I think I have to lay the points on them as well. You give me Winnipeg under a touchdown, it's real tough for me to not lay those points. So let's lay the points on Winnipeg minus 5.5. Bombers win the Grey Cup. Bombers cover minus 5.5 against the spread, and give me the under on the 47.5 point total. If you're looking for an MVP, why don't we just go Dalton Schoen, because he's been winning this entire league since the second that he stepped into it. So Dalton Schoen, your Grey Cup MVP. Bombers win, Bombers cover, and give me the under. I'm going to put my microphone on mute here for just 2 seconds. And when we come back, what we're going to do is pop over to the CFL Fantasy page, and we are going to build my CFL Fantasy football roster for the Grey Cup. So I will be right back. All right, let's see. What do we got? Let's go through the chat here. Peg, yeah, but more Winnipeg fans here, though, as I live around the corner from the field. Very nice. Bombers have way more experience in cold weather than the Argos. Keebs shouting that out. That's an excellent point. Makes sense. It's in Saskatchewan. Ontario too soft, says Chad. Oh, geez. I'm not getting into this argument. I'm not getting into the is Ontario too soft argument. Andrew, just if the Blue Bombers win, can't imagine going to a Winnipeg Jets game with the Grey Cup in Canada Life Center or the phone booth. Sask people are awesome, says Gorian. Taxed to death, though, says Chad. Yeah, I hear that. Are you going to do XFL and USFL this year, says Daryl? Probably not. Like, look, man, I sat down, I watched some XFL games, some USFL games last year, and I just didn't like the flow of the games. Like, I just didn't like. I don't know. I didn't like the flow of the football. I really didn't. So I might give it another shot, watch it for a few weeks, see if I like it, and then maybe start doing some content, but chances are probably not. Let's see. Maybe Toronto will win the first championship since the Raptors in 2019. Entirely possible. Don't trust the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup right now. Nobody does. Nobody does. I'll lose like 4 this weekend as it is. I'm from Ontario. We are soft. Right. Thank you, Keebs. Appreciate that. There, an input from an Ontarian themselves. All right, let's take a peek at CFL Fantasy. So, obviously, with the playoffs in CFL Fantasy, you only have a $30,000 budget with which to build your team. You get one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, a flex play of either a running back or a wide receiver, as well as a team defense, and you do not have to play every position. So let's start with the quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, I think the only 2 options that you have here are Zach Collaros and McLeod Bethel-Thompson because it's only the one game. Collaros is 9,500. MBT is 9,100. So you can't save too much money between either one of them. You could go with Drew Brown or Chad Kelly if you expected some short yardage possibilities, or maybe even Dakota Prukop. They're much cheaper, 7,300, 6,600, and 5,900 respectively. But you're kind of begging to poach touchdowns in that instance, and in a game that I think is going to be fairly low scoring. I don't think you mess with that. I think you got to look at one of the 2 starters here if you're going to play a quarterback at all. I think there's a possibility that not playing a quarterback might actually be the way to go in this, because either way, you are dedicating a third of your salary cap to a quarterback. Can the quarterbacks blow up and have great games? Absolutely. But in what's going to be a low scoring game, or what I think is going to be a low scoring game under the 47.5, I think I'm going to go ahead and not play a quarterback. I think it's going to be more worth my while to look at a team defense that is available at a third of the cost and then use that $6,000 elsewhere in my lineup. So I don't think I'm going to play a quarterback, but I think I am going to play a team defense. So if you bop to the team defense side, you can take either one of these teams, the same dollar amount, $3,200. I like the Bombers to win. I like the Bombers to give up less than, I'm going to say probably less than 20 points. I'm going to go like 23-17 here, maybe for a final score. So I'm going to go ahead and notch in the Bombers defense on my fantasy roster this week. So we're not going to play a quarterback, but we are going to go with the Bombers defense. Let's take a look at the running backs now. You've got Brady Oliveira at $8,000, the starter for the Bombers. You've got Andrew Harris at just over $6,400, the basically 1A for the Argos to the 1B of AJ Ouellette. And I think Andrew Harris here is probably going to be the play at running back. Brady Oliveira, I believe, had a good game last week. Yeah, 130 yards on 20 carries, caught the ball 4 times. Oh, that makes me think twice. Okay, let's do this. So Andrew Harris, what did he have? 42 yards and a touchdown on 9 carries. I don't think he caught any passes last week. He caught one for 30 yards. So, I mean, that's 4 points on that one reception. Let's put in the more expensive option there. Let's put in Brady Oliveira at running back and see where that leaves us with the rest of our salary. So that could potentially change. We got $18,800 to play with. When you look at wide receivers, wide receiver is the bread and butter of where the CFL fantasy game is built. It's a PPR scoring format, so your high volume wide receivers are always going to be more valuable, with the exception of the starting running backs who also catch a lot of passes. So like your Kadeem Carries and the like. But we don't have Kadeem Carey playing this week. So at wide receiver, your top options, Dalton Schoen, who I talked about before, $10,000. He's a third of your budget, but it feels like he is worth every penny. Nick Dembski at $8,850. You got Curly Gittins for Toronto at $8,350, who had a really solid game, bit of a coming out party for him last week as well. Tavares Daniels was the beneficiary of the most embarrassing play in CFL history, but he's $7,900, probably off the strength of that touchdown. I think I'm going to be staying clear of him. If we're going to go wide receiver flex and assume that we have all of these dollar amounts available to us, you can go Dalton Schoen or Nick Dembski as the top Winnipeg option, and Curly Gittins as the top Toronto option, and you would be able to afford that. You could do either one of those things, and I think that might actually be the way that I wind up going with this. So if I go Dalton Schoen, and then in the flex, go with Curly Gittins, that does finish off my whole roster, and I do still have $447 to spare. So the only question here, I guess, is do I stick with Brady Oliveira or do I go with one of those two Argos running backs? Like you have Andrew Harris and you have AJ Ouellette, who a lot of his value comes in catching passes. He only put up 3.8 points as a runner last week, but contributed 13.3 as a receiving back. So those are kind of the two options there. And AJ Ouellette, between the two, did wind up being the more valuable back in the game last week. So like Andrew Harris put up 14.2, AJ Ouellette put up 17.1. So do I think either one of the two of them are going to be more valuable than Brady Oliveira coming off of a 20-point performance? I think probably not. Oliveira was one of the top runners in the league this year, even though he did only generate 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. He did have a receiving touchdown as well this year. I think we'll stick with Brady Oliveira. So that's going to wind up being our fantasy roster for Grey Cup 109. Brady Oliveira at running back for $8,000. Dalton Schoen at wide receiver for $10,000. Curly Gittins in the flex at $8,353, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense at $3,200 leaves me $447 left over. I am not playing a quarterback this week because look, Kalaros would be the only play, because I think Winnipeg is the only team that's likely to see multiple touchdowns through the air. I think Toronto, one of their touchdowns, I think is going to come on the ground. Whether it's going to go to Ouellette or Andrew Harris, I don't know. But if one of them comes on the ground, that's only like one more touchdown that I think the Argos are going to score, which would only leave MBT with one passing touchdown. So if you were going to play a quarterback, I think it's got to be Kalaros, but I think that just eats up way too much money. So we're going to go ahead and not play a quarterback in a low-scoring game and instead go Oliveira, Schoen, Gittins, and the Bombers defense. Since we got Andrew and Gorian talking about NFL in the chat, I think we'll go ahead and call it right there. I've got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers winning their third consecutive Grey Cup by beating the Toronto Argos 23-17 in Grey Cup 109. Bombers straight up. I like the Bombers minus 5.5 to cover against the spread, and we'll stay under the 47.5 point total. And if we sweep that, then we're 8-7 for the CFL playoffs. And I can't feel too bad about that. Keebs caps us off really well in the chat. Says, great season, Justin. All the best, my man. See you in the Twitter chats. Thank you so much, Keebs, for all your contributions this season to those Twitter chats, which are lifesavers sometimes in this community. We got a nice little group in there, so I appreciate you all very much. That's it for me. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. At one point, I think we hit like 10 concurrents in this completely impromptu stream, so that is fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and following along all CFL season. And don't you worry, the 2023 season, your boy's going to be back. Enjoy the game on Sunday. Grey Cup 109, Canadian football. Gotta love it.